The following discussion is not necessarily the views of all involved. The goal is to start open and honest discussion in the Christian worldview. Like all things, weigh what you hear with what you know and join us in our pursuit for the truth. Enjoy the podcast.
Is there a Chinese equivalent to ninjas? That's probably something I shouldn't ask.
David and Saul. Do you think it's going to work out for them?
Well, I mean, I've been so optimistic, and this sounds really good. The listeners are getting, like, a lot of our personality this episode.
An uncomfortable amount. I'm sure we'll be asked to stop later on.
Yeah, it's...
All right, welcome to the Second Rate Saints podcast. I'm one of your hosts here, Caleb. To my left is...
I'm Joshua. And to my left is...
I'm Joel. And to my left...
It's me, Caleb again. We've gone full circle. Sadly, we are missing Stuart and Colton. Very sad. It's a very sad day.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to get over it.
We'll see. We'll see. Joel.
Yeah?
Do we do things on the internet?
Yeah, so we've got a couple of different places that you can find us online right now. We've got secondratesaints.com. If you'd like to send us a chat message, we've got a chat feature in the website. We've also got blog posts, book reviews. Really anything that we're going to be doing is going to be found on the secondratesaints.com page. If you'd like to send us a longer form message, you can also email us at secondratesaints@gmail.com. And then we're on Twitter and Instagram as well. So, yeah, check us out wherever podcasts are found.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm going to pass it back to you, Joel, again, because you've recently finished a book that I really liked, but I read it a while ago, and it's probably foggier in my mind than it is in yours. What do you read? Do you read?
I do. Well, this one was actually, again, an audiobook. I'm terrible for it, but I do listen to quite a few audiobooks. This one was The Abolition of Man by C.S. Lewis. I don't even know if it's the best way to consume that book would be to listen to it, because it's very dense. There's a lot going on. So Abolition of Man. It's one of his most, I guess, obscure books. Josh, did you just get up and get a baseball cap just to match me? Is that what it is?
No.
There's a dress code here. Oh, and Caleb's putting one on too. This is so weird. Usually... Anyways, now for our audio listeners, everyone has just put on baseball caps, which makes this a sports podcast now, I think, maybe. Anyways, The Abolition of Man, one of his more obscure books. It is a response to education. I think it's just the British education system. Isn't that what it is?
Yeah.
By and large, so what it started off as is a critique of a book that he mentions, but not by name, because in his writing of the book, like he often does, he kind of like changes a few things to widen the scope. He did the same thing with Mere Christianity, right? Like where originally it was a radio interview, and then he kind of reformatted it to be essays.
It also starts off of a critique in education, and it just kind of spirals into like, anyway, culture's not doing well.
It becomes like a whole societal thing. And one of my favorite Lewis quotes actually come from, I knew it before reading the book, but comes from C.S. Lewis's Abolition of Man. And that is, what was it? We scoff at honor and then are shocked when there are traitors among us.
Yes.
Right, which is so good. It's the whole thing of like, we have no code of chivalry. We have no higher standard that we're holding people to. But then when people go back on their word, when people are terrible people and we don't teach ethics anymore, we're surprised by that, right? And it's like, no, there's a direct correlation between the education system we have our children in and the current state of society.
Well, it's that nothing is sacred anymore.
Yeah.
Right. The sacred space has been demolished.
Mm-hmm.
I've been audiobooking How Not to Be Secular.
Okay.
Which is a synthesis of Charles Taylor's work, Secular Age, in preparation to read Secular Age. And while I'm reading through that, I just get flashbacks of C.S. Lewis's Men Without Chest, which is an essay in Abolition of Man. And I just get flashbacks from C.S. Lewis's stuff where it's like, oh, C.S. Lewis talked about this and predicted this. Interesting.
I'm about 3/4 through Carl Truman's Rise and Triumph of the Modern Self. Have we covered that on the podcast yet?
No, because I don't think any of us have totally finished it.
Totally finished it, yeah. But that's the longer version of his Strange New World book. Anyways, it's a whole thing. But yeah, it falls into that category of like critique of culture right now. Of course, C.S. Lewis is doing it years and years ago, but definitely I think worth the read. But it's such big, like such large topics that you really need some time to sit on it. But, have you read it, Josh?
I read the first the part just about the book that he
Okay.
critiques.
Yeah,
It was too big brain for young Josh.
fair enough.
So
It was too big brain for me. Like now.
Sometimes I try audiobooking stuff, and then there's three reasons why I stop. One is like, this is dumb. Two is this is such a good book, I need to read it in person. And three is I don't understand a thing that's going on. I need to read this in person.
Yeah.
well, it's like I had this like the total collection of C.S. Lewis like book where it has like all of his books that are not his fictions, and like halfway through The Abolition of Man, I was just like, I think I need to save this when my brain is bigger.
Yeah. I think I would point to The Great Divorce for some of the ideas of Abolition of Man before I would talk about Abolition
The
of
Hideous
Man.
Evil is the narrative version, and the Hideous Evil or the Hideous Strength. I think it's published
of
under
his sci-fi.
multiple. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's published under a couple different titles if my memory's right, or I am completely butchering the name and it's not. Forgive me, but the third part of his space trilogy
That
is the
Hideous Strength.
narrative version of a lot of what he's critiquing in Abolition of Man.
Okay.
That
Yeah.
hideous strength.
That Hideous Strength.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of what else to bring up about the book. It's not a long book.
Who would you recommend it to?
Hmm.
The type of person, like, what would be the questions they're asking?
Yeah, so to me it errs almost on the like Christian existentialism side a little bit, bringing up some of those same ideas, different answers, but same ideas. I would probably recommend it to anyone who's gotten a little bit taken up with the culture wars, you know, because I think there's this idea that we just kind of jumped in feet first into the culture wars, and it started with us, right? But like it didn't, right? Like C.S. Lewis saw some of the rumblings of what was already happening during his time, and there are accounts of society having some of the tendencies we see today, a long time ago,
Yeah.
in Rome, for goodness sakes, right? Like there's nothing new under the sun, and I think that reading The Abolition of Man and the critique of the education system, and then looking at the education system now, you get less and less surprised
Fair enough.
by things that are happening. But and whether that's desensitization or the opening up of your mind, one or the other.
Waking up.
Yeah, awake not woke or whatever
Yeah.
the new one is called. Yeah, man, there's so much going on. But yeah, that's kind of why I read it, and I think
Sweet.
that's kind of who it's for.
Cool.
Probably not who it's for, like probably not who we thought he was writing to, but definitely where it ended up.
Still.
Yeah.
Well, I think we should transition into our topic. We're going to be continuing with Samuel.
Really?
Yeah. You'll probably notice that because, you clicked on a podcast or video that says Samuel. But we're doing chapter 23 and 24.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Josh, could you give us a brief synopsis of where we're at previously on Samuel?
Yes. So previously, David fled. We 2 episodes ago we talked about Jonathan and David planning the runaway from Saul and figuring out if Saul was actually trying to kill David. Chapter 21 and 22 talks about David fleeing, and he flees to Ahimelech, the priest at Nob. Was it?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And grabbing Goliath's sword and going on the run. And David flees to Gath, Goliath's hometown, goes crazy for a bit. King Achish is like, "Hey, why is there's so many crazy people in my kingdom? Why do we have so many of them?"
Quite, but yeah.
Yeah. And then David hides in the cave of Adullam and tries to get his family safe passage to Moab. potentially because of their family heritage in Moab via Ruth, but that's speculative. And then you also have, eventually, Saul then goes to the priests of Moab and kills them all, and the city that saves them. Yes, at
No,
Nob.
not Moab.
You're right. Goes to Nob, kills all the priests that helped David, and through this all, Doeg the Edomite was a spy / servant of Saul that was spotting out where David was going.
Mini villain that pops up and then disappears.
But one of the priests get away, and his name is Abiathar, son of Ahimelech.
And David's like, "You're chill with me.
It was like,
You can come live with me in my
and
glorious cave."
He takes the ephod,
Yes.
which Goliath's sword was hidden behind.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that leads us to chapter 23. Now, let's read it.
All together now.
All together. Follow along with your Bibles at home.
Play along at home, kids.
Now they told David, "Behold, the Philistines are fighting against Keilah and are robbing the threshing floors." Therefore David inquired of the Lord, "Shall I go and attack those Philistines?" And the Lord said to David, "Go and attack the Philistines and save Keilah." But David's men said to him, "Behold, we are afraid here in Judah. How much more then if we go to Keilah against the armies of the Philistines?" Then David inquired of the Lord again, and the Lord answered, "Arise, go down to Keilah, for I will give the Philistines into your hands." And David and his men went to Keilah and fought with the Philistines and brought away their livestock and struck them with a great blow. So David saved the inhabitants of Keilah. Good guy, David.
Do you think it's interesting that his dudes, like his band of men, not only are they afraid in Judah, which is David's tribe, like that's his home region, right? That's out of anywhere in any of the tribes that David would be safe, it would be there. They're scared of their life even there. It just shows how much on the run they actually are.
Yeah. Well, it also because those mercenaries, that whole group that's around that area, are people that are on the run from those various small kingdoms.
Yeah.
And so they're probably not welcomed anywhere in that whole section of the Eastern Mediterranean.
Okay.
I just mean because they're as we find out later, all of them are hiding in caves where raiders hide.
But I think that's making it bigger than it has to be. I think it can be more regional than that.
Yeah.
But anyway,
it should also be known that Keilah, the city, which is only 6 kilometers north of Hebron, which 6 miles northwest of Hebron, which eventually becomes the first capital for David before he takes Jerusalem. Keilah gets raided a lot.
mm-hmm.
They're kind of like the easy picked city because they're on a border, and so they get attacked a lot, and that will make sense for later conflict. But for right now, they're getting attacked, and David says, "Hey, let's go help these people out." And God says, "Yeah,
It's also
go do that."
It's also in stark contrast to. So you have David wanting to be like, "Oh, there's a city attack that's out of my way, and I'm, trying to hide for my life. I should go help these people."
Mm-hmm.
And then, just a little bit before, Saul was like, "Burn the whole town."
Yes.
Oh,
yes. These people harbored people against me. Kill them,
possibly by
all.
accident.
Yes.
Devote them all to destruction, because that's what he does.
Yes.
And now that he's devoting things to his own purposes, he's fine destroying things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the contrast with even in such close proximity text-wise is very interesting.
Well, and you've also got David. Saul was terrified of the Philistines constantly and would make horrible decisions and like try to do these other things to subvert out of fear. Whereas David immediately goes to God.
Yeah.
Should I fight them or should I not? And his men are like, hey, we're not comfortable with this. And it makes sense. None of them, like, they're not from Israel. Like
I think it's too presumptuous to say that they are all mercenaries. I'm not even sure if most of them would be foreign mercenaries. It's more local men that are on Saul's bad side.
yes.
That's what my thought is. There may be mercenaries there, and I think it's safe to say that there probably is. But that would be an inference, where I think the more obvious conclusion would be these are people that see no forward progress under Saul's monarchy, or people who have made themselves enemies of Saul's.
Assuming that these aren't the men that become his mighty men.
Yeah, but if he's on the run, I don't.
Yeah, because the men who are his mighty men are specifically labeled as not Israelites.
Yeah, but I just don't see the connection. I think it's a bit presumptuous, but that's me.
Okay.
Are we allowed to disagree on this?
Yeah, I think we are.
Okay.
I disagree. No, I'm kidding.
I disagree that you guys are allowed
I don't
to
think there's
disagree.
something that can be drawn from this quite yet.
But they're not as willing to listen to God.
Mm-hmm.
Or they are not, the fear of possible death is not shaken when God talks.
Yeah, well, it also shows how good of a leader David is compared to that of Saul.
Yeah.
When his soldiers don't want to do the thing that he orders, he loses it.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
And David's like, okay, do you want to talk to him again?
Yeah, and David's like, okay, I'll go talk to God again.
Yeah.
I'll
We'll get double confirmation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just more contrast.
It's also just hilarious that, like, I know it's not this easy, but it almost seems like it's that easy to get God on call.
Okay, hold on. We'll
I
get
know.
there when we
I
get to
know.
the ephod.
I know.
Yeah.
But like in this passage right now, that's why I'm saying it's too easy to say this. But it's like, hey God, should we go to battle? Yeah, you should go to battle. And then the people are like, hey, I don't think we should go to battle. And David's like, I'll ask him again. Hey, should we go to battle?
You should go to battle.
You should go to battle.
Okay.
Yeah. And that leads us to the next part. When Abiathar, the son of Ahimelech, had fled David to Keilah, he had come down with the ephod in his hand. Now it was told Saul that David had come to Keilah, and Saul said, God has given him into my hand, for he has shut himself in by entering a town that has gates and bars. And Saul summoned all the people to go to war, to go down to Keilah, to besiege David and his men. David knew what Saul was plotting harm against him, that he was planning harm against him. And he said to Abiathar the priest, bring the ephod here. Then David said, O Lord, the God of Israel, your servant has surely heard that Saul seeks to come to Keilah to destroy the city on my account. Will the men of Keilah surrender me into his hand? Will Saul come down as your servant has heard? O Lord, the God of Israel, please tell your servant. And the Lord said, he will come down. Then David said, will the men of Keilah surrender me and my men into the hand of Saul? And the Lord said, they will surrender you. Then David and his men, who were about 600, arose and departed from Keilah, and they went wherever they could. When Saul was told that David had escaped from Keilah, he gave up the expedition. And David remained in the strongholds in the wilderness, in the hill country of the wilderness of Ziph. And Saul sought him every day, but God did not give him into his hand.
Man, I don't know what that means. That he saw him every day, but God did not give him into his hands.
Sought. He searched for him.
No, I know what sought means. That's not the question.
I thought you said saw. But
Oh,
He
yeah.
saw him every day. He's like, I can't get him.
Yeah,
He's
but
up there.
that's my question is like, how is God protecting him? Just making Saul look the wrong direction while he sneaks away in like a weird slapstick humor kind of a way? It's just, this whole story kind of smacks of that to me.
Yeah, so the strongholds in the wilderness of Ziph,
Yeah.
although in a tribal territory of Judah, it is within a steep area, steppe, area that would have been sparsely inhabited and a place in which fugitives could easily hide. The strongholds were small outposts that served as signaling stations and contact points for herdsmen and villagers in the area. So there was a lot of places to hide in this like 5 mile to 13 mile around area.
Well, and I think it's what probably helps this whole thing is we shouldn't think of the culture and the time and the society of what's going on right now as in like dark age or medieval.
Mm-hmm.
This is tribal.
Yeah.
Right? It's not easy for any government, like Saul's or even David's, to organize mass information to go around in such easy ways to understand where are my enemies, even in my own areas. Towns don't, like, that's not how communication works. That's not how the tribes interact with one another either, right?
Yeah.
Like, how is with so many people supporting David, how is David not just, coronated? Like, why not? Well, because it seems like a lot of tribes still just straight up support Saul.
Yeah. And
because it's tribalistic. It's not medieval or dark age.
And it's very difficult to run a search party through miles of hills and mountains with caves systems in them. And so, yeah, you could send your army up there, but like David's like, as the story starts off, David is an outdoorsman, like with the sheep. He's out in the hills.
Yeah.
So like, this is his territory.
Yeah.
He's on home turf. Saul's a farmer.
Yeah.
and he's been in the royal city for a lot longer than David has. So, and he's not, basically David's on home turf.
Mm-hmm. I like the point where he says, let him, or he seeks to destroy the city on my account.
Yeah. He's going to kill everybody because of me.
He's going to kill everyone because of him. I just, there's something going on there with the devoting to destruction as well, that he knows Saul is going to do it for himself. Right.
And it's also noted that the Kyla being a walled city, the point that Saul points out there is that, finally, I've got him cornered.
Yeah.
Like, he's not in open territory where he can go and hide. He's in the walls. I can siege this city. He won't be able to get out, and I'll get him if it means destroying the whole city. And that, I'm fine with that. Basically, Saul is saying that he's an easy target. He's a fish in a bucket now. But the Lord tells David ahead of time. And also the contrast there that people were pointing out is that Saul's not going to the Lord.
Okay.
For answers. He's not seeking out the help of the Lord. Should I hunt David? Because he knows what he's doing is wrong. Whereas David is referring to the ephod, referring to God, constantly asking
What is
him.
referring to the ephod?
Okay, are we going to get into it?
Let's talk about it, because I'm confused by it.
So, to Josh's point, several chapters ago, he made a comment how the ephod, it could be used just as a generic, like, idol term.
Yeah.
Or it could be used in reference to the ephod worn by the high priest. And with the ark gone, that may be the most holy relic that they have.
Yeah.
In the ephod, as described by Exodus, there's the Urim and the Thummim. I forget how to pronounce it. Thummim. There's a at the end of that second word that can be used to find God's like will. I don't want to use the word divination, but it's kind of. Yeah. So like there's a description of its use in Numbers 27:21, and he shall stand before Eleazar the priest, who shall inquire of him by the judgment of the Urim before the Lord. And so one of the things that's note David's questions in this chapter. They're all yes or no questions.
Yeah.
All of them. And so it's thought to be either some sort of a flat like coin device or some sort of dice or something, because you see other things in the ancient Near East that are like that you can inquire of the gods with.
Yeah.
And that would be part of the ephod, as described by Exodus.
Yeah. And Saul does use the priest at the time of Saul, when he goes to battle once, as we read, he consults the Urim and Thummim. But that's once, and it's out of fear. Whereas in this, David it's out of concern for other people.
Kind of. He also begins showing his own worry pretty soon.
Yeah.
So I think he's also like it's getting to him.
Yeah. But he's also like, it's the comparison here is between Saul and David, being one is consulting God for his every action in this passage, where Saul is going straight, I want to kill this man because he affects me.
Doesn't Saul even kind of make the argument? Not the argument. Doesn't he even say like, God has given him into my hand? Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. He theologizes the whole.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah. Yeah. But it should be known that, like, the difference between divination and prophecy is divination is seeking what will happen without God, whereas getting an answer from God, like prayer or prophecy, or
by definition of God authorizing that thing to be.
Okay, divination controls will. That's the difference between divination and prophecy, is that divination seeks to control the will of the gods, whereas prophecy seeks to understand the will of God.
I thought divination was there to discover the will of the gods.
At this point, divination would have, in all of its forms, would have sought to please the gods, but also the results would be recorded and then expected to be reproduced, right? So when Josh says he's trying to divine outside of God's will, they're just trying to use human wisdom, basically a very rudimentary science.
Isn't that just like Babylonian?
Yeah, but it would have been a very similar thing to Canaanite stuff.
But I think that I thought that they also their divination was to seek the future, like seek the future, like petition God to discover the future, or petition God to speak to them through things to know the future.
That's not been my understanding of it, but I might be.
I could be wrong. I know you've read more on it.
Yeah, but I'm not sure exactly where we're coming from there.
My point is that he was afraid of saying that the Urim and Thummim was divination. And yes. I was saying specifically it's not, because God outlaws divination. Whereas each of the outlawed sorceries has a parallel in which God does that is technically different because it's him oriented to the thing rather than the people designating the God to do it. So like necromancy is forcibly speaking to a dead man or causing the god to resurrect the dead. Whereas resurrection and new life is the actual version of that, and it's initiated by God. The parallels of God's rituals and actions in the Jewish life are similar to these things, but different because it's God downward rather than man up to God.
Okay. But I still struggle with that's not divination then. Because by that definition. And you can't just say God doesn't allow divination, so this isn't divination, if it appears to be divination. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think
it gets a little bit into like the piety stuff, but still.
Yeah, it also just gets into what's the definition then, right? Because I think Josh is arguing for a specific you guys are arguing from different definitions. That's all.
Okay.
And I would be more sympathetic towards Joel's because I think it does fit in the definition. But
yeah, because my point would be that this is This is an avenue in which God said, you can ask guidance for how you should live, how you should rule and serve the people at these times using this avenue. This is how you inquire of me.
Do you think if we found it, we could still use it?
I'm going to say no, because we can pray.
So, do you know what exactly they are?
We don't.
They're just pieces on.
We
the
don't.
ephod.
We don't know what they are. We don't know what they look like. We don't know how they're used. Not physically.
Because I can't think of a type of divination that would fall into that. And
It's-
I did a little bit of reading on like early Assyrian divination, but then even that might be too late for this.
I would expect it to be more Egyptian in origin if it's coming out of Exodus.
Really?
Yeah. Well, it's coming out of Exodus, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
If it's going to have its cultural ties, it's like polemic device stuff,
Mhm.
right?
And it is an older device, whereas,
They haven't figured out that they can open up goats and read their veins. You can't.
They
don't
probably
do that.
know. They probably know you can do that. I mean, that you could. I mean, you could. I mean, no, you shouldn't, but you can.
You
Yeah.
can't do that. You can't do that. But you
But it has
physically
been
can.
done.
because, yeah.
We've done our excursus in divination.
Dude, I would love to have a talk about divination just as a whole, but
Yeah, we should do a whole discussion on biblical sorcery.
because God uses weird amounts of divination, even when we get to like the medium that brings Samuel back for advice.
Yeah, the Witch of Endor,
Yeah,
the little cute bear things.
yeah, it's a Ewok. That's the
She's an
Ewok
Ewok.
medium. Imagine what a large Ewok could do. Anyways,
That was
Yeah.
my joke.
yeah, I know it's a terrible
Well, no, here's
joke.
the thing: not to jump too far ahead, so we can get back to the story. But there are cases where God uses for example, the star over Jesus' birth
Yeah,
is not a Jewish thing. It's the other cultures have celestial signs for when a king is born, and so God uses the
Zoroastrians.
astrology. Yeah, God uses Babylonian astrology to bring over three wise men to present that this king is the king of the earth.
yeah.
Do you guys think people that mine the Bible or other things, among other things, to discover when the end times, the return of Christ is, begins to blur into divination?
Oh, I wonder.
Oh man, the can of worms you've just opened is unbelievable.
Okay, guys, are we getting into that, or should we say that's what we'll be talking about in the episode when we do divination?
I think any claim to knowledge,
No, that's not the
progressive revelation, stopped with canonization.
Wait.
But not in a cessationist
Wait,
sense.
is Pentecostal subjectivism through communal hermeneutics divination?
You just said a whole bunch of words.
Here's the thing. I think you're wrong. But
Can you repeat that sentence?
Is Pentecostal subjective hermeneutic through subjectivity through communal hermeneutics
Yeah.
divination?
I haven't thought about it, but yes.
here's the to be fair, a lot of other denominations have that problem.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But also
Any
subjective Pentecostalism is going to be a very
That is
it's
such a
wide
niche
term.
amount of people that just are like, oh man, that's a brilliant critique.
I think there's 3 of them in the whole world, and they're all here.
Shall we read the rest of chapter 23?
Probably we should get back to the
I
topic
guess,
at hand.
but I'm distracted now. I can't.
David saw that Saul had come out to seek his life. David was in the wilderness of Ziph at Horesh, and Jonathan, Saul's son, rose and went to David at Horesh and strengthened his hand in God. And he said to him, "Do not fear, for the hand of Saul, my father, shall not find you. You shall be king over Israel, and I shall be next to you. Saul, my father, also knows this." And the two of them made a covenant before the Lord. David remained at Horesh, and Jonathan went home. Then the Ziphites went up to Saul at Gibeah, saying, "Is not David hiding among us in the strongholds in Horesh on the hill of Hachilah, which is south of Jeshimon? Now come down, O king, according to all your heart's desire to come down, and our part shall be to surrender him into the king's hand. And Saul said, May you be blessed by the Lord, for you have had compassion on me. Go make yet more sure. Know and see the place where his foot is, and who has seen him there. For it is told to me that he is very cunning. See therefore and take note of all the lurking places where he hides, and come back to me for such information. Then I will go with you. And if he is in the land, I will search him out among all the thousands of Judah. And they rose and went to Ziph ahead of Saul. So Jonathan's back.
Yeah. For a second.
Yeah.
He was like, hey, it's going to be okay. And
Yeah.
he leaves.
Yeah. So
What was that?
Sorry, I had a shiver. So they meet up. They make a third covenant.
It's not
Second covenant.
I don't know. I read
Two-
a commentary on
maybe
it, and his whole thing was like, yeah, we don't really know what's going on with that. Probably is just like a covenantal renewal. What you got?
No, I have no theories. I'm just, why does he keep making covenants with the same guy over and over?
It seems more like a covenantal renewal.
They're friends.
Yeah.
I guess so.
We should make more covenants.
I'm gonna let my yeses be yeses and my noes be noes.
I think a covenant
noes?
I think a covenant is different than a
knows?
promise.
What's that?
I think a covenant is different than a promise.
Okay.
But a covenant is a promise. But not all promises are covenants. Man, I am derailing hard.
Yeah, you're really having fun with this episode.
So
What were the reasons you said for making more and more covenants?
No, he didn't.
It's just the same
a covenantal
one?
renewal. It's more just like David's like, everything's not going well. And Jonathan's like, hey, find strength in God. Everything's going to be okay. You're going to become king. And I'm going to be at your right hand. It's going to be awesome. It's not. But
It's not, yeah.
it's like an encouragement. It's more probably like a covenantal renewal, at least. And that's what, I forget the guy's name.
So
Not this guy.
by presenting Horesh and Hakilah and Jeshimon as like the places where David is, like the area mentioned before, the wilderness of Ziph, where there's all the caves and stuff like that, those areas he's specifically like narrowing down that David is hiding in an area that's like maybe 1 or 2 miles.
Oh,
Like 1 or 2 square
with
miles.
400, although now 600 men.
Yeah.
Because it even his numbers begin increasing since last time they were
Yes.
listed.
And so basically saying like David isn't moving much.
Mm.
Like you're just bad at looking for him.
He is hiding in Judah, though,
Yes.
which is a big area, and it's his home turf.
Yeah. But basically these guys, supporters of Saul, are like, hey, we know where he is.
And he's like, "Hey, bless you.
Yeah.
You took pity on me."
Yeah. The Lord bless you.
Yeah.
This is like the first time he's like called upon the name of the Lord rather than like with Saul where he was like, may your God.
Yeah. Probably thinks he's doing something.
Or is he doing it for political reasons?
I think political reasons. There's
I'd
like
say.
Yeah.
even his going as far back as when he was supposed to commit the Amalekites to destruction. There's that whole he begs Samuel to come back with him, and
Yeah.
this like keep up the persona.
Yeah. Okay. Let's finish this. Now David and his sorry, that was a
Finish
bit
it.
aggressive. Now David and his men were in the wilderness of Maon in the Arabah to the south of Jeshimon. And Saul and his men went to seek him, and David was told, so he went down to the rock and lived in the wilderness of Maon. And when Saul heard that he pursued after David in the wilderness of Maon, Saul went on one side of the mountain, and David and his men on the other side of the mountain. And David was hurrying to get away from Saul. As Saul and his men were closing in on David and his men to capture them, a messenger came to Saul saying, hurry and come, for the Philistines have made a raid against the land. So Saul returned from pursuing after David and went against the Philistines. Therefore, that place is called the Rock of Escape. And David went up from there and lived in the strongholds of En-Gedi. Or the rocks of division.
So we have the disappearing stone.
And now the rock of
Division.
escape.
Wow. Theology of disappearing rocks.
Can I do a biblical theology of rocks?
What would some good ones be?
Peter.
Jesus,
Okay, no.
cornerstone.
Yeah, fair enough.
That is
These are
mysteriously
like
not
rocks,
here.
though. Disappearing rocks, escaping rocks.
Yeah,
I mean,
Jesus is
you'd
the
have
rock that went away.
You'd have the rock that Moses hits and water comes out. Oh, I'm sorry, Jesus.
Water
I mean,
rock. And then, also Jesus.
Yeah.
Man, we're doing everything but talk about the text.
And I'm just thinking about theology rocks.
Okay, so some things to mention is that Maon is near the Dead Sea, which is cool, which means David is not in, he's not hiding out in great places.
He's not doing it well.
Well, I mean, there's not a... You can't drink that.
No, do you think he's intentionally hiding in places that nobody goes because nobody goes there? Obviously,
Well,
right?
yeah.
He should be.
No, but I mean,
That's how hiding's done.
what I mean is, as I cover my face, what I mean is he hiding? Do you think there's a different, there's the obvious tactical reason why you would hide in a place that is barren. Is there a theological reason that David is in the wilderness?
Yeah, because it mirrors the exile of the Israelites.
Yeah.
And his numbers are growing.
And his numbers are growing.
Well,
Whenever you go
yeah.
out, you come back with more.
Okay, that makes sense for sure. But there is kind of this, he is experiencing the
life of Israel,
life of Israel. Yeah.
the way Jesus did.
Okay, yeah, there's messianic imagery going on there for sure.
Sometimes with David, that does happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
You guys, I don't even know if you guys are on my side or making fun of me, but if we're going to make a case that there's messianic imagery anywhere, of course, him being driven into the wilderness.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Now, he
You're
does
right.
eventually get to a place that's nice, and that's called En-Gedi.
You made that up.
No,
No, I'm sorry.
no, En-Gedi's actually an oasis.
Yes.
So it's also, not only is there some strongholds and commercial center, trading centers there, but it's also a cultic site.
What do you mean commercial sites? Like an Amazon warehouse? What are we talking about?
So it is in the wilderness of that Judean area.
Yeah.
It's an oasis in which people meet for trading on their paths.
Mm.
So, and because there's a stronghold there, and it's tactical, and it's cultic. It's a in amongst the wilderness. It is a place of safety and community.
So he just kind of hangs out there?
And what he's doing is he's using that as a reference point to the idea is that's the nice place amongst the wilderness that he's staying close to and around so that he can get supplies and water and everything.
When you say it's a cultic site, what do you mean by that?
No idea.
Oh, so
None of the explanations other than remember the tabernacle tree that we mentioned before where they all meet? The same thing. It's a place where people meet that is significantly religious because it's an oasis in a wilderness.
I see.
So it's
Kind of like special tree.
yeah, special tree, special grove. I guess if you were going to make the theology is this is amongst the wilderness of the earth. This is an Eden.
Okay.
The same with the groups of trees, the grove that Abraham and Sarah get buried in.
Yeah.
And that cave in amongst a forest is called the Cave of the Naked Duo, which is a reference to Adam and Eve. Anyways.
That's a horrible superhero group. You're getting a lot of... The listeners are getting a lot of our personality this episode.
An uncomfortable amount. I'm sure we'll be asked to stop later on.
Yeah, it's... I mean, it's not David and Goliath. I think that's part of the reason.
This is just, hey, run around with David and Saul.
Yeah.
These are filler episodes. That's all.
However, En-Gedi has another name, which we'll get to when we read chapter 24.
Which is... Oh, okay.
Oh, do you want to say it now?
I was just going to say it's in Genesis as well.
Crags of the Wild Goats.
Oh, never mind. That's a different one.
We'll get there.
We'll get there. Chapter 24. When Saul returned from following the Philistines, he was told, "Behold, David is in the wilderness of En-Gedi." Then Saul took 3,000 chosen men out of all Israel and went to seek David and his men in front of the Wild Goats rocks, or the Crags of Wild Goats. And
Who are they?
why are there so many Craigs there?
It's a gang.
My Craig, my brother Craig, his brother Craig.
No, that's Cliff. That's such
And he
a
came to
dumb
the
joke.
sheepfolds by the way, where there was a cave, and Saul went in to relieve himself. Now David and his men were sitting in the inner parts of the caves, and the men of David said to him, "Here's the day of which the Lord said to you, Behold, I will give your enemy into your hand, and you shall do it to me as it shall seem good to you." Then David arose, stealthily cut off the corner of Saul's robe, and afterwards David's heart struck him, because he had cut off the corner of Saul's robe. He said to his men, "The Lord forbid that I should do this thing to my Lord, the Lord's anointed, to put out my hand against him, seeing he is the Lord's anointed." So David persuaded his men with his words and did not permit them to attack Saul. And Saul rose up and left the cave and went on his way. What I love about this is that Saul has been searching for this guy for who knows how long, goes into a random cave to go to the bathroom, and David and all his men are like up against the wall. Guys, he's here.
What I find interesting is he goes, and this how it's recorded chronologically is not likely how it went down. I understand that. But the text does present it as Saul walks in, David and his men are like, "Oh," and then he goes, cuts the thing, goes back, and then his men are like, "Hey, come on, we're like, what? You could get," and they have a full blown conversation in an echoey cave, and then Saul leaves.
Yeah. Now, an interesting point is that it mentions the sheepfolds around the cave, and some people go with the idea that because, like with Doeg, the chief of shepherds, that a lot of the shepherds are like kind of like an informant network for the king.
Yeah.
That's why he goes to that cave.
Because he thinks it's safe.
Because he thinks it's safe. And David's inside of it.
At least that makes
And that's why he goes in alone.
sense, at least.
Yeah. Yeah. That it's not just the king is just going into any cave.
With possibly upwards to 600 men inside.
Yeah. That it's, yeah. And so he's, as far as he's aware, he's in a safe place.
It's a safe place, but it's not.
But it's not. Yeah. It's funny. There's 2 instances so far where it's like David is like right there and God's like, "Hey, go in this direction," or "Don't notice." Like they're on either sides of a hill.
Yeah.
It's, "Hey, the Philistines are attacking you." Or
Also, we should point out, Saul drops his personal
yes.
vendetta to go do his job.
Yeah.
That's good.
Hey, good job, Saul. You're finally doing it.
You're doing something. I don't know what exactly.
Yeah, and it says it's following the Philistines, so it looks like they just went into the land and he just like created a military presence to like push them off. Like
They weren't committed to war, but if there's no military presence stopping them, they'll go for a little nightly raiding.
Yeah. David's protecting his borders as he was commanded by God to do.
Yeah, Saul, yeah.
Protect Israel from the Philistines. So that's cool. You know, now the significance of Saul's hem is not just that he cut off a little tassel. It's the hem of your clothes was a distinguisher of your rank.
Yeah.
And so not only is it like, "Hey, I cut off your thing."
It's insulting.
It's insulting because he cut off the king's like signet. It's the same kind of hem that is in reference in Joseph's colorful coat.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so it's like a commander.
and it's also of the same type that Jonathan gave to David.
Yeah.
But princely.
Yeah. And so it's also a marker of proof that like if he were to kill Saul, I was the one that did it. But he decides not to. And now he's going to use it as proof to say, "I'm not going to kill you.
Because we're not enemies.
I'm not your enemy."
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then the whole Lord's anointed thing, David's like, he's recognizing that, like, "Hey, I probably shouldn't kill you because God hasn't said I should."
Right.
Yeah.
And so he's, even in the absence of God's direct voice of command, right? Like before, we see David, when he doesn't know what to do, he goes to God and is like, hey, what should I do? Right? But in this case, he's seeing that I shouldn't just do whatever I want, even though I can. Like the Lord hasn't said anything about this, right? He says, I'm going to be king. And he said Saul's rejected as king. But that doesn't mean he's still not God's chosen one.
Okay.
And so I shouldn't do anything about it.
Which is fair, because right now it just proves David's whole, I won't do it unless God tells me to.
Yeah.
I wonder if he used the ephod to figure out if he should kill Saul. I wonder if that's a question he asked.
Yeah.
Right? Because if that was his thing.
Well, you also see, like, it looks like he cuts off the hem, and then it says like he feels guilty.
Yeah.
Like the passage specifically says, and afterward David's heart struck him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Where he just all of a sudden realized, I probably shouldn't be doing this. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if also it's a justifiable thing.
Yeah.
Right? Like you do feel sometimes people just have guilt over things that it's like, no, but you did what had to be done. That was a good move. There's nothing wrong with doing that. But it just shows in this regard the purity of David's heart.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there's a parallel here and Michael's response to Satan in Jude?
The Lord rebuke you?
Yeah. Lord has designated your time. I will not do anything about it, even though he is the one that will do it later on.
You know, you're positioning Satan as God's anointed, eh?
No.
Like that's, yeah.
No.
I get.
I mean, there is the comment of he is the anointed angel.
Yeah, he's
in
anointed.
Ezekiel.
He is an anointed cherub.
Yeah.
An anointed guardian.
Yeah.
So there's already an uncomfortable. We'll have to do
And he does have an ephod style
he
arrangement
does.
on his chest in Ezekiel 28.
He does. We'll have to do a whole episode on Satan at some point.
Joel
I
has
don't
a
like
very
this.
uncomfortable look. Yeah.
It was a weirdly big thing in catechism.
What, Satan? Or like.
Yeah, Satan as a anointed cherub and all this stuff. It came up in catechism and it took like 20 minutes of it.
And Michael, he will kill him.
Mhm.
Sorry, imprison him, defeat him.
Yeah.
In Revelation.
So much good art of it.
Oh yeah. I saw a great an icon of, it was like a big statue the size of a TV of Michael, giant angel descending on a dragon.
Yeah.
It's like this. So cool.
I mean, it's cool. Don't buy an icon, though.
Why not?
We can't have this conversation again. We had the idols thing. If you want to listen to that conversation, go to is Disney Modern Day Idols or whatever we called that episode, which is a crazy thought. Anyways.
Yeah.
Wow, we want to derail. I'm so sorry.
Well, I think that's just kind of the headspace for tonight. I kind of enjoy it, so let's keep doing it.
Let's keep going. Okay. Afterwards, David also arose and went out of the cave and called after Saul, "My lord the king." And when Saul looked behind him, David bowed with his face to the earth and paid homage. And David said to Saul, "Why do you listen to the words of men who say, 'Behold, David seeks your harm'? Behold, this day your eyes have seen how the Lord gave you today into my hand in the cave. And some told me to kill you, but I spared you. And I said, I will not put out my hand against my Lord, for he is the Lord's anointed. See, my father, see the corner of your robe in my hand. For by the fact that I cut off the corner of your robe and did not kill you, you may know and see that there is no wrong or treason in my hands. I have not sinned against you, though you hunt my life to take it. May the Lord judge between me and you. May the Lord avenge me against you, but my hand shall not be against you. As the proverb of the ancient says, out of the wicked comes wickedness, but my hand shall not be against you. After whom has the king of Israel come out? After whom do you pursue? After a dead dog? After a flea? May the Lord therefore be judge and give sentence between me and you, and see to it and plead my cause and deliver me from your hand.
There's a lot there.
Mm-hmm.
I do find it interesting his invocation of Lord as judge.
Yeah.
He does the whole thing. It was like, I'm not against you. God's going to be judge. And if
And
you're
the Lord
wicked,
will avenge me.
and he will be against you, but I won't. I know you're against me.
Yeah. But then he also, what's interesting is he appeals to him as father
Mm-hmm.
because he's married to his daughter.
It's his
Yeah.
his stepson. No, not stepson.
Son-in-law.
Son-in-law.
Yeah.
Stepdad.
But the fact that he appeals to him as father and as king,
Yeah.
Yeah.
he's like,
All the cards are on the table.
yeah, like, hey, like, don't listen to these liars that are yes men telling you that I'm treasonous.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. And again, it's David's returning to this is between you and God. Right? Almost as if David is a passive observer in the downfall of Saul, which I think you could say he is.
he's a victim of Saul's downward spiral and demise. Yeah. Because I think a little bit of it is not just that David is going to be king and God has said so, but because David is constantly around him, he's reminded of the king he should have been and the reason that he's no longer king.
Right.
He's confronted constantly with his failure when he sees David because he knows that he's promised to be king by God and that he had so many chances to not do it.
And it's just clarifying David's not a usurper, right?
Yeah. Well, no.
Which is-
And
yeah.
again, I'm going to bring up the Cain and Abel comparison.
Mhm.
When God said to Cain, not sufficient, do it again. If you do well, don't you know it'll go well? And his response is, I'll kill the guy that did it well.
Mhm.
And so is Saul, right? That guy's doing it right and he's going to be king. I'm going to kill him.
Yeah. What was when we were doing our research, we came across what was it, the Herodian genocide or whatever it's called?
Oh, yeah. I think he hasn't made the plea yet.
Hasn't made the plea. Which plea?
Yeah, so that comes when Saul asks him to not kill his descendants.
But
Yeah.
it does have, I don't know if this is where you're going with it, Joel, but the oftentimes self-deprecating like
Yes.
speech is associated with humbleness,
Yeah.
which I think you see in every culture, but that's
It's
find it
notable with kings,
Yeah.
and like ancient Near Eastern kings.
and he's just so David's just like, I'm a dog, I'm a flea. What do you
Yeah.
want with me?
Why are you hunting after me? I'm nothing.
Yeah.
Do you think that's
So my thing was that there is a parallel between Saul not wanting a perfect king to come
Yeah.
and Herod not wanting a perfect king
absolutely.
to come. That's what I'm
Absolutely.
talking
Yeah,
about,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Where there's this kind of, if we're talking about messianic imagery again, which is something you're probably going to have to get familiar with when we start David's actual reign.
100% good catch.
Is that there's these interesting parallels with the life of David and the life of Christ
yeah.
that I think are intentional to tie them together so that Christ is recognized as continuing the Davidic line and David is seen as a good king.
Yeah. Well, and he's appealing to his paranoia, right? He's like,
Yeah,
I'm not gonna kill you. Like there's no treason.
Yeah.
Like,
It's also like the ultimate test. This,
yeah.
like, this was perfect. If
You're
I
alone.
wanted to,
Yeah.
this is it.
Yeah. And we know you can't take me. We're in a cave alone.
Or with 600 men.
Oh
on
yeah, no.
David's side.
But even that, where he's just like, we're alone. I killed Goliath.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
without armor, and now I'm a trained soldier.
With Goliath's sword.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's finish this. I said it again. Wow.
Let's finish
Let's finish this. As soon as David had finished speaking these words, of course, to Saul said, "Is this your voice, my son David?"
Is that you?
Hey, is that you, David?
No.
And Saul lifted up his voice and wept. He said to David, "You are more righteous than I, for you have repaid me goodness, whereas I have repaid you evil." And you have declared this day how you have dealt well with me, in that you did not kill me when the Lord put me into your hands. For if a man finds his enemies, will he let him go away safe? So may the Lord reward you with good for what you have done to me this day. And now behold, I know that you shall surely be king, and that the kingdom of Israel shall be established in your hand. Swear to me, therefore, by the Lord, that you will not cut off my offspring after me, and that you will not destroy my name out of my father's house. And David swore this to Saul. Then Saul went home, but David and his men went up to the stronghold. That's the Herodian slang that you brought up with your reference to Herod was a common practice between kings when there was a takeover from one king to another, not like a natural succession,
or even in a natural succession. That also did happen
in the worst of times,
which for a lot of history was all the time.
Yes, they would kill the descendants of the previous king so that they wouldn't have a usurper.
Yeah,
and lions do this. The alpha lion in a herd.
Mm-hmm.
Herd pride.
So you're saying the Lion of Judah didn't do it?
Yeah, because he's better.
I'm sorry, just
no, it's
lion
fun.
imagery. And
I don't even know how he would. That's really
well, no, because David already promised he's made a covenant with Jonathan and Jonathan's descendants.
Yeah,
that he would have them sit at the table. But yeah, lions do this when the new male of the pride takes over. He kills all the sons of the previous alpha.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I think.
It's just wild that Saul's moment of clarity here.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's just humbled to the knees.
He only has moments of clarity.
Yeah,
though.
He's caught with his pants down.
But the verse 20, and now behold, I know that you shall surely be king. Just explicitly saying, yeah, I know. And that the kingdom of Israel shall be established in your hand.
Mm-hmm.
It's just wild.
Yeah.
And so the question would be, why do they separate? Why does that not just...
Why isn't that the handoff?
Yeah, why not have the coronation then?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's because... If I had to guess, it's because God took the kingship away from him, but he's not done being king.
Yeah, but why does David stay in the stronghold in southern Israel? Well, to me, all I can think of is I don't know if the tribes are there.
Yeah,
right.
The kingdom's not ready.
Many of the northern tribes are not.
Saul might not actually be ready. Like David might know that it's like he's just doing his thing again, where he promises that he won't do anything bad. Because like up to this point, Saul just keeps saying that, right? Like I'll do better, and then doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
It could also be that the relationship is so soured, like.
I mean, David going back into the stronghold kind of makes it more think that it's like, oh, he doesn't really believe him at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or it's just like Jonathan, like everybody just knows that like this can't be fixed. That like this relationship, like how much counseling is Saul going to need?
Yeah. How many spears do you throw at somebody before they don't trust you anymore? Right? Like it's
and I just mean like we've all seen this in people where like a relationship is so destroyed that it takes years of willingness and grace and preparation to like sew that back together. And there's always that pain that's like in between like a scar, like on flesh, right? That leaves a mark. And I think that's kind of what's happening, where it's just like their relationship is so torn. History is tearing them apart.
Yeah.
Like literal history is tearing them apart. And
But how do you cut off someone's robe in the dark in a cave when they're taking a whiz?
Your eyes are adjusted to it.
Okay, that's fair. But like, you think if you would rip your, basically like holy garments, you would notice.
Yeah, you'd probably hear it. I don't know.
my thing is like, how
David's a
sharp is his
ninja, dude.
knife? I don't think he is. I don't think the
because he's Jewish.
I don't think the war in ancient Near East really reflects that of feudal Japan there, Josh.
You're right, but he could still be stealthy.
He could be.
Yeah.
But I like, what kind of cutting implement would you have? This is at the
Isn't
turn of the
ninja
Bronze
Chinese?
Age.
Isn't
He's,
ninja
dude,
Chinese?
he's pulling out Goliath's sword. He has a
Japanese.
what?
It's Japanese, yeah.
Yeah, ninjas are Japanese.
That's what you. That's where we're going,
Forgive me.
man. What a tangential.
I'm
thing.
sorry. I am so distracted today.
Is there a Chinese equivalent to ninjas? That's probably something I
Yes.
shouldn't ask. But what is
Yes, there is.
it?
I
Yeah.
forget.
Uh,
So bad.
anyways, sorry. This is the turn of the Bronze Age. How does he have something sharp enough to like cleanly cut off his
You
garment?
can get sharp stuff.
I guess so. Maybe this is just another
Goliath's sword is
chronological-
probably made of iron because it's Philistine.
Okay, yeah. It's
It's also
interesting.
huge and not very good to use in a cave.
That would be crazy.
Oh my gosh, that's a whole nother thing we didn't think about Goliath's fighting. Is because he has a giant sword made of iron. When that clashes with a bronze sword, the damage to that bronze sword
Yeah.
would be like
It's useless.
you get one block in and you've got an actual cut in your blade.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could hack apart other people's swords.
Yeah.
Which would look like probably magic to them. They'd be like, "What?"
Well, I
in the
mean,
world?
it's like the conquistadors going on the Aztecs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With their obsidian like club.
Oh yeah, that were just shattering on the conquistadors' metal plate armor.
Yeah.
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 That's crazy.
Well, and that they like there's crazy there's recordings of the Aztecs fighting like from their perspective, and they remember just like they figured out the cannon, but only that when the loud noise and the smoke and the flash of light happened, people died. That's how they talked about it.
It's like a magical boom.
Yeah. When you saw the flash and the light and the smoke and the sound, 4 people next to you dropped to the ground.
That's
Somehow
crazy.
that rhymed.
Yeah.
It's kind of poetic, Josh.
Yeah.
Want to tell us more about Aztec? No, you don't.
It's very sad.
It is
Very sad story.
Yeah.
But actually, more people speak Nahuatl, the language of the Aztecs, now than ever in Aztec history.
Wow. You're saying the Aztec Empire's on the rise again?
Yeah, it has been. Yeah, they recorded the language, and there's 1 million people that can read and write Nahuatl.
Did you know Latin's on the rise in northern Italy?
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's technically becoming not a dead language, which I don't think has ever happened before.
Hebrew.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so.
But modern Hebrew is very different.
yeah.
What is this? I'm sorry.
I don't know. I feel like okay,
Well,
let's
now that we're talking about Hebrew, we
Did
should
we
go back
finish
to
the
kings.
chapter?
Yeah.
This is a short episode
it's a
too.
bit of a shorter episode.
Well,
Um
let's bring some stuff up. I had some more research.
okay.
So, the oath not to decimate was obviously for that political reason that we mentioned, right? The Herodian slaying, but also when you killed the descendants of someone, there was a cultural phenomenon that people believed in at the time that when you destroyed the bones or the descendants of someone, you destroyed their ability to be in the afterlife.
Mm-hmm.
And so Saul is also saying, "Hey, please, like I've messed up, but at least let that be good."
Yeah.
Which is
Which means he's also, if that's the case, he's also falling to religious practices of the.
Yeah, that's the thing though. Like early Hebrew afterlife theology and imagination
Mhm.
is not super clear, and it develops.
Yes, and so what they mean is that you're no longer conscious in Sheol.
Probably.
Yes.
I don't think that there's enough information
Yeah.
to say one way or another, and especially if syncretism is going on, who knows?
Yes,
But-
true.
We know those things are linked, but we just don't know how it would have been articulated
Yeah,
to exegete that, to understand what is in the mind of Saul.
because this is a similar thing to when Josiah later on, the third last king of Judah, destroys the bones of the prophets of Baal. Because when you destroy the bones of someone, you stop their ability from being in the afterlife.
It comes up in Psalms sometimes where it's like,
Yeah.
And in Proverbs where it's like you've written the word or the wisdom on your bones essentially, or whatever it is, or that'll strengthen your bones and things like this, because your soul, your resolve, your basically your essence is in your bones.
Yeah,
which is super weird to think about, but it is just one of
Essence
those.
is stored in the bones.
Yeah, there we go. It's just one of those, like, the imagery. This kind of needs to be deciphered through their culture.
yeah, or like that phrase, old phrase, that's never used anymore, but like a connotation of fear is like my bones are rattling,
Mm.
and it's that same idea of like your resolve is in your bones.
Fair enough. Yeah.
My conscience observance of Sheol is in my bones.
Yeah.
Yeah. So David and Saul, do you think it's going to work out for them?
Well, I mean,
What do you think
I've been so optimistic, and this sounds really good.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
We'll have to wait till next episode to see how the smooth transition from one king to another goes.
Yeah. Well, next week it looks like we're doing chapter 25 because that is a huge chapter. And then 26, Saul gets into more trouble with David. So
yeah. It's going to get worse before it gets better.
yeah. Saul doesn't end well.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. No, I mean like David, we eventually get into David's problems, but
I think I'm addressing the listeners now. Oh, sorry. What were you going to say?
I was going to say it's compared to the beginning of the book, God is interestingly less apparent.
He's got the ephod.
Yeah. But that's what I mean is like there's the ephod, but like we did the whole thing with the running from Saul, the thing with Jonathan, the dinners, the like everything, and it's become like it started off big with like the battles with the Philistines and the losing of the ark and all that stuff, and then it's been becoming localized to a few people rather than Israel.
Yeah. Well, it feels like a natural transition leading out of Judges,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, just because the system of Israel's leadership is changing so drastically that it kind of needs to be this.
It's becoming personalized. God to a man. God to the king rather than God to the people through the prophet.
Interesting. It does feel like the culmination of all of the judges throughout Judges would be the bestowing of a king or a priest king, but it's not a priest king because we can't have those.
Not yet.
But David seems to think about it, and we'll get there at some point when we do probably a biblical theology of
Priest kings.
priests, because it's a big deal in Psalms.
Yep.
Yeah, it gets.
And then
huge.
Hebrews freaks out about it.
Yeah. Joel, you were going to say something before I cut you off about the audience.
Yeah, so we've been working through 1 Samuel, and we're getting close to the end of it. We've gotten some response on how the Samuel series has gone, but I would love more. And more than that, I would love to know if we should just do 2 Samuel or if you think we should do a different book of the Bible. I think I might be ready to try another book once we're done. But
Yeah,
we'll see.
I'd love to come back to 2 Samuel.
I think eventually
conclude it,
we'll
but-
have to. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. We'll see if our audience has some ideas.
Yeah.
Should we leave it up to them? Should they vote for it in a poll?
Maybe.
Yeah, fair enough. But what if there's no turnout? There's one guy who decides the.
Then one man will decide the fate of all of the second-rate saints.
This is why I say maybe.
Okay.
It's going to be a...
You know who you are.
Yeah.
Isaiah or Charles.
Yes.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be fun out of the way. But Joel,
Yeah.
do we...
Okay, I'll do the closeout. Okay, I won't fight with you this time.
I mean, do we want to derail because we've been derailing this.
We've been derailing the whole time a little bit.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. I think this episode has been a little bit more casual. There was some substance to the chapter, but it wasn't as action packed, I didn't find, as some of the others.
Yeah, it really was this, like, this is the part, if this is Lord of the Rings, this is the part where Frodo and Sam are just walking.
Yeah.
They go to this place, and then they go to this place, and then they go to this
And
place.
cool stuff happens, but nothing
But we didn't write it down.
game-changing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for listening to the Second Rate Saints podcast. Check us out at secondраtesaints.com. If you've got any questions, comments, or concerns, email us at secondраtesaints@gmail.com. Follow us on our Instagram and our Twitter. I hope that you've enjoyed the conversation thus far. Yeah, have a great week, and we'll see you next week.
Oh, yeah. We'll be done soon, and then I'm going to go get toilet paper.